Hey everybody, it's Mad Master here. I'm doing a video today, and this video is something hopefully I'll do an okay job at, but because I did not write this out. But I want to go into this subject because it's a very complicated subject that I've been kind of formulating in my head, and I promise probably this will not be the last video I do on the subject. And I've been trying to figure something out, and I kind of had affirmation that there is something going on with this, because there's something that happened in 2008 through 2015, 2016 to the so-called left in America. And I've kind of figured it out because ironically, there's people that are stuck. Speaking of being stuck in the past, there are leftists that are, or liberals at least, that are stuck in the past. And this is actually a good thing, as I will explain. So recently, Jon Stewart came out about how he was canceled or called to be spreading misinformation back in the day about Iraq and the war on terror. And that made me think, well, he's defending Joe Rogan. He's saying, information changes. He came out about the Wuhan lab thing. I'm just like, okay, there's a substantial difference between him and his like Stephen Colbert, who was his mentee or whatever you want to call him. And then you had David Sirota, the one of the screenwriters and conceptualizers of Don't Look Up, which was recently on Netflix, which is actually a decent movie. I do recommend watching it, even though it's not great. Like, it's not the greatest movie, but it has some good points. And he came out and said the same thing. It's like mainstream media has no place to say what's misinformation, and all this stuff. And it was very, very close to my heart that, I felt very warm feelings about that people are coming out and saying this stuff, because especially these guys. And I just realized they're from the old, the old left of, not the old left, but at least from the late 90s to through mid 2000s left, which I still consider myself a part of, because there was this anti-censorship. Actually people like Six Sex and Hammer have talked about this. This is kind of a known thing. There is this post-woke, post-Trump left that is an allegiance with now, after this part of the left, that's beholden to corporations, big tech. Basically, if they could get their way, I'm not going to overstate this, but they would have people eating the bugs and living in the pot, probably. There's this group of authoritarian liberals that are so cognitively off base and lopsided that they have these weird obsessions and these weird predilections. Since I'm trying to say this the best I can, I just had a nitro cold brew, so I'm pretty wired, so who knows, I might be stammering a lot or something, but who knows, I don't care. So this whole thing is kind of what happened. I kind of postulate it happened after Occupy Wall Street got astroturfed, in history. The Democrats started to say sort of did what they did with BLM later. Not as much, of course, but as they did with BLM later. But it's like they started to use that to gain more power after it was a more organic movement before. And Obama, with Obama becoming president too, before that, that was kind of the genesis of this whole thing. So liberals were able, at least like bourgeois, dare I use that term, upper middle class or upper class liberals, and a lot of their base were able to look past drone bombings and war on terror stuff, and because it's a smiling guy who's a liberal that did it, like Obama was. So this kind of softened them up to this concept that, oh well, gradualism's okay. Maybe 50 years from now we'll have Medicare for all, or we'll stop these wars. But oh well, the big pharma or the medical industry is giving more money to these politicians. I'll support them, or the military-industrial complex. And it was this weird cognitive dissonance that happened with this. So this the left fell asleep during Obama. A lot of the left, not necessarily Jon Stewart, not necessarily David Sirota. Obviously, a lot of people did not, but that's what I'm speaking of. So Jon Stewart has the actual memory. I'm not like a lover, like a complete lover of Jon Stewart, by the way. He is still establishment to a major extent. But he remembers when the left were about these things, or against censorship, against, not calling everything that's different than the mainstream narrative misinformation, not, trying to question and trying to question things, and with going against corporations, war and terror, whatever. Or, these narratives that were part of the discussion when Jon Stewart was big. He remembers this shit. That's what he made his. I mean, maybe it's because he made his name on that stuff in a lot of ways, but still, he remembers enough. And a lot of the left have seemed to have forgotten, have amnesia. There's the NPCs, as we call them. So we have that going on, and then we have. I'm just giving the trajectory of this. The whole woke thing, the whole SJW. These millennials and younger that were very, they're very politically active, and they had this another lopsided thing, because they were very into, like, they love Starbucks, and they love, big tech, and they love, like, their Apple laptop or phone. I mean, I'm filming this on an Apple phone, so I'm not any less guilty, made by, slave labor in China or whatever, or very bad labor practices in the least in other countries. And so you had this rising class of these people that they call themselves leftists, but they really wanted to, like, emphasize this purity of language and thought with sexuality and race and stuff. IDPOL, identity politics. They were more into that than actual economic stuff, because they're middle class, so it's like kind of blinds them. It puts blinders on them about their upper middle class, and it puts blinders on them about the old labor movements or anything to do with actual leftism in the United States over the last 200 years or so. So this kind of evolved, and there was the whole debate go back and forth, and these SJWs and all this stuff, but and a lot of people, the anti-SJWs were like people like Amazing Atheist or Shoe on Head, and they were actually like, wait a second, well, the Democrats are all corrupt too. That's what they said back then, at least. And Shoe on Head's still the same, by the way. I believe she is. But, I'm talking about YouTubers right now. Okay. Mundane Matt was sort of like that. He kind of, whatever, but, so there's these people like that. So, then there were people like Six Hex and Hammer, Razor Fists, that were kind of right-wing libertarian ideologues, but but there was also SJW, and still anti-establishment to a certain extent. But then Trump happened, and this is what I'm going to try to explain here, what I think the whole Trump phenomenon is. I think it's not necessarily a bunch of people in a smoky room, planning this whole thing, but it was definitely a calculated psyop, useful idiot, what else can I, controlled opposition, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of terms for it, and I don't think it's as cut and dry and black and white as, like, you would say it's like a conspiracy theory or something. But I think that this was planned, because populism was already on the rise because of Occupy and the war on, the backlash against Bush W and everything. So this kind of congealed into Trump in a right-wing sense, but the neoliberals, look up what neoliberalism is. It's not liberalism, or it's not leftist. Even though they use leftism or liberalism to, gain power and, compete in the market of ideas. But you could say neocons and neoliberals are kind of two sides of the same coin. Because neocons are very much, into a lot of the same stuff. A little bit more warmongering than neoliberals, but neoliberals will just be like a trade, free trade everywhere, blah, 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 with all these unaccountable globalized entities, right? That's what neoliberalism is. NAFTA, GATT, all that stuff, TPP, all these stuff. That's what neoliberalism is. It's about these billionaires and rich people getting together in these conglomerates and, controlling the world. World Economic Forum, So even though they proclaim to do good sometimes, but I don't buy it, or it's just to alleviate their guilt or whatever. So what happened was, I think this was a concentrated effort to really muddy the waters with Trump to get him elected. I don't know if it was a conscious thing. I don't know. It was just kind of a confluence of factors and ideas that happened with this. But basically what happened was Trump got elected. And then all of a sudden, you heard nothing about neoconservatives, war on terror, corporation. You heard less about corporations and how evil they were. You heard less about all these things that were, formerly bad. All of a sudden, sometimes they were good. Like, oh, well, David Frum might have been a neocon under Bush, but he was against Trump, so I like him. Trump bad, everything else good. Trump bad, everything else good. Excuse the term, but it retarded millions of people. Mental and cognitive critical thinking areas, and I know I have a book back there called The Cult of Trump. It was all right, but I also have the Antifa book that one Andy No wrote. I have a lot of different kinds of books, by the way, but I don't know if you could see it, but, that's what I'm saying, that this kind of just dulled the senses of actual liberals, or are they actual liberals? Because Trump became this like straw man that they wanted to use against, anything bad was Trump. Anything with Trump was bad. Anything with, anybody else was sort of good or good. And it gave people a lot of excuses to support things that formerly they would have been aghast at and against. And the whole thing, I think, was calculated because Trump is a symptom of the system that brought us all that other stuff in many ways. And he's also a symptom of the rising populism at the same time, which they're scared of. They're fucking scared of. Look at the trucker convoy. That's a populist movement. They're shit scared because the populist movements are rising. Bernie and Trump. There's regardless of their bona fides being not maybe as populist as one said, the perception by the elite and establishment were that they are populists. And the populism is what scares the globalists or globalizers, whatever you want to call it, the elites. They're scared of that. They're scared of populist movements. Trucker convoy or Occupy, or even, to some extent before they co-opted it, BLM, to some extent. I'm sure they were, even though they've been able to astroturf and co-opt that into their own political game and make money from it too. See, the thing is, like, a lot of people don't talk about these political organizations make all this money. And that's what a lot of this is about. Because this is why I know this, because I gave money 2018, 2019. God forbid. I regret it. I'll regret it the rest of my life. It was not like a shit ton of money, but I gave like some to AOC and some to Bernie and stuff. I still think Bernie is better than most of those other people, but I'm just saying, like, I regret giving money to that. I think Tulsi Gabbard as well, I gave money to. So then they flood your fucking inbox with emails after that. MoveOn.org. Blah, blah, blah. We need money to beat Trump. We need money to beat the blah, 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 blah. They love their money. It's all a game. It's all a rigged game. All these donors and corporations and stuff and all this stuff, these PACs, these super PACs, unaccountable dark money, all this stuff. And it's all a game, So the Trump thing gave them like the pedal to the metal on the neoliberalism. They could just say anything bad was, oh, anything this is Trump or anything that's associated with Trump is bad. So it was a distraction from their gaining more power, much like COVID was in some ways too. Not to bring that up again in a fucking video, but in some ways it was, because they took all the money. Upward transfers of wealth more than any other in history during 2020. So these people are not your friend. Just because, one exception, Charles Krauthammer said that Medicare for all would happen in 5 years. He was already, I think he had cancer or something. The guy had some, maverick opinions once in a while. He's an interesting guy. Some of those guys weren't all bad, but, these scumbags like, David Frum or fucking, what's the guy that got hired at NBC, some neocon guy, it's like, oh, well, they're against Trump, so we like them. They talk bad about January 6th, so I don't care what else they've done. They might have murdered babies, but they were against January 6th. Those racist Trump supporters who flew the Gadsden flag and spray painted shit on Nancy Pelosi's desk. It's this moronic fucking cult of. I'd have to write a Substack article to really develop my verbiage about it, but it's so fucked up. It happened. This is what the Trump thing was. To me, this is what the Trump thing was for them to put the brakes on populism, because even though they got more than what they bargained for, didn't they? That's what they're getting now. They're going to get more than they bargained for in this fall too, as more populist sort of leaning sort of Republicans, some libertarian type of Republicans will get elected too. All the neocons and neoliberals are fucking scared shitless right now, because they are all about money and power, and that's always what they were about, no matter what they said. Oh, and it was just so dumb. And I remember going to this kung fu class that I do want to go back to one day, but they wear masks, so I hate working out with a mask. But and this guy's like, well, don't you hate Trump? We were sparring, whatever. You hate Trump, right? You hate Trump. Well, I hate a lot of things, but I hate the things that caused Trump more than anything. The things that Trump was for that I don't like, I want to attack that. I want to attack the ideas. I don't care about this one doofus who is just another one of the doofuses has been elected. I want to change the system itself that caused him to be there, as far as what are the problems that caused him to be there. I'm talking about the problems that populism is, wants to solve too. What are the problems that caused Trump? Not just Trump. It's just people got so fucking blinded. That's what they call Trump derangement syndrome. That's what I believe it is. It's like everything else. Orange man bad. Orange man I am NPC. Orange man bad. What about the environmental stuff that Obama did? That blah 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 blah. I'm just making something up. That Trump continued. Orange man bad. Orange man bad. See, that's what they wanted. They wanted people to do that. They wanted people to focus on this one straw man, this one useful idiot, whatever you want to call him. And that's not to say that there's nothing good about Trump. I'm just saying. It's just they took this thing and they oversimplified things, and they put it, they accelerated their because they were scared, Ron Paul revolution, Dennis Kucinich, all these things, and Howard Dean, even before he sold out, it was they're scared. They were scared for real. So they had to bring something in there for a straw man to tear down, so they can keep their power and to keep people distracted with the circus. That's what they wanted. CNN, they made Trump. They talk about Trump all the time. They don't really. It's just like the P.T. Barnum and all these things, all these ideas be more, the more bad stuff you talk about, the more people will pay attention, blah, blah. I don't even know what the stuff is, the people distracted by the fucking, all these things. So that's what, and I think it was probably concentrated to some extent, maybe some leaked emails. I know there were leaked emails from Hillary that said, oh, we need these Trojan horse candidates or whatever. They were, WikiLeaks leaked those. I think the Trump thing, the Trump phenomenon is all put in, and I'm not saying that even Trump or his supporters are as bad as they say, obviously, but they wanted this guy in there so they can attack all these other ideas, or by default attack other ideas that way. Oh, Trump Russia. Oh, Bernie Russia too, kinda. Bernie Russia. Medicare for all is a pipe dream, candy the kid. They attack all these populist ideas. I mean, that's a populist idea. Left-wing populist, nevertheless, or going after free trade or something like that. So they had this thing, but I think they had more from what they bargained for now. I think they're really going to suffer, these people. And I hesitate to use this term because of the baggage involved. Globalists. That's what it is. I mean, and globalists is a term, whatever global, I don't even know. Globalization is like more of an adjective, or a verb or whatever. But globalists and globalization and globalism isn't always bad. It's not all bad, even with all that. I mean, you can have better quality of this or that in another country that you didn't have before, blah blah blah. It's not all bad. I'm not saying all this stuff is bad, but globalism is the society becoming more concentrated in the hands of the wealth and power, in the hands of a few who form global corporations, global conglomerates, global entities to control the masses. That is what they want. And things like Trump, with more isolationist rhetoric, or more economic populism under Bernie Sanders, or the foreign policy is different. The populism is a threat to their system that they've enriched themselves with, and that's why a lot of these things have happened. And when we hear about Jon Stewart, or even Janice Kucinich or someone like that who may come out and say something that's different for various reasons that goes against the narratives that are being perpetuated by these people, then it's very refreshing but that's the old left. And not the old left as in like the Trotskyite fucking groups of IWW or whatever the fuck. I mean, the old left from the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, because the anti-WTO protests and the war, the anti-Iraq war protests, and also just the whole thing with George W. Bush, who seems to have been rehabilitated by the media and these neoliberals. That's really what it was all about back then, and Jon Stewart fucking remembers this, and that's I'm really proud of him coming out about that, and coming out about the Wuhan thing too. It could be controlled opposition, whatever conspiracy thing you want to say. I don't care though. The rhetoric and the narrative being taken apart by the old, the people these people probably still like Jon Stewart. I mean, I'm for the most part. Maybe they want to cancel him now too. I'm sure they do. Some of them do. Some of the real diehards, like the guy at the grocery store that was spraying fucking hand sanitizer on him because I was right by him. It's like, But some of those real NPC types that are really afraid of things, I'm sure. So, but overall, when we have rational common sense come out from two people in 1 week that are I consider the pre-insane left, because it's insane. I mean, I think everybody should not care about their own gender and have sex with different, whatever, or different sexes and not be discriminatory. But, I love my new Mac. Fuck you. Who the fuck do you think you are? Oh, this phone has stuff mined from third world things, near slave conditions, and people work 12-hour days and they're like 13 years old in some country, or the minerals are in the phone. But oh God, they said a bad word 20 years ago. They said the N-word on a TV show as a joke. Oh my God, that's so fucking stupid. We gotta get past this shit. There's real problems. But that's a distraction, much like Trump was. Trump was a fucking coordinated effort to destroy populism, even though it probably did the counter effect, as we will see over time. That's about all. Peace out.